licensed broker who's been educating our listeners for more than a decade. Steve, how can our listeners get in touch with you?
Thanks, Dan. They can visit healthinsurancementors.com or call me directly at 630-674-1551. That's 630-674-1551.
Stuck in traffic? We've got the answer from the AM 560 Traffic Center.
On the outbound Edens, no troubles, although it is busy going in at 1 hour. The Kennedy, 45 minutes. Downtown to O'Hare, inbound Eisenhower accident at Pulaski. Off to the shoulder, it's an hour and a half going in, hour and 20 out. Stevenson inbound accident on the exit ramp to southbound 355. Outbound Stevenson is an hour out to 355 in the Dan Ryan, 30 minutes downtown to 95th Street. There is an accident outbound Ford in the left lane at 130th. It is also very heavy along the Tri-State and DuSable Lakeshore Drive either way. The Jane Addams is clear, eastbound Reagan and southbound 355. Those are snug westbound 8094, an accident at Chase. This report is a service of Salem Surround, a local digital marketing agency providing high-performing digital solutions to surround your target audience. Go to surroundchicago.com today. From the AM 560 Traffic Center, I'm Jill Urchak.
Now, your official weather forecast from the Air Right Heating and Cooling Weather Center.
Tonight will be partly cloudy with a low of 46. Thursday will bring cool temperatures with a mix of clouds and sun, becoming breezy in the afternoon, reaching a high of 60. Thursday night will be cloudy with a low of 49. Friday is expected to be mostly cloudy and breezy with a few showers in the afternoon, reaching a high of 65. I'm meteorologist Jason Caterina on AM 560, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. This hour of the Shaun Thompson Show is sponsored exclusively by DonleyAuctions.com. They need your guns. Sell for top dollar. DonleyAuctions.com.
I love America. I love the Constitution. I love the First Amendment. I want to carry and all else. I love property. And let me tell you something. If you care about your country, I'll read Ludwig von Mises and the 6 lessons of the Austrian Economic School, motherfuckers.
From the streets of Melrose Park to the trading floor of the Merc, he's fought for every dollar he's ever earned. And now, with personal liberty and our system of capitalism under assault in America, he's here to seize back our rights from the government. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Declaration of Independence in the other, he's Shaun Thompson. And this is the Shaun Thompson Show.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white, and
now, when you are a political junkie,
and when the band waves, hey,
everybody knows his name. When you're not a political junkie, everyone knows his name, but few knew or know him. Very, very interesting. And also part of the reason this country is the youngest and the most successful. We have the most interesting, dynamic people, Renaissance men, entrepreneurs, and people who are never satisfied. That really sums up my next guest, even though when I say his name, you're going to instantly know it. And he may be responsible for some of your hair thinning, as he is mine. Scott Rasmussen, how are you?
I'm doing great. With an introduction like that, how could I be anything else?
Well, you're a very interesting cat, and what I liked about it is, in 1978, he changed the world. That's where my paragraph stopped. And I thought to myself, was he the producer and promoter of the Bee Gees, or did he date Bo Derek? Neither one is true. You are the co-founder of what I call ESPN. Most people know it as ESPN.
Yes, that was a long time ago. In fact, it's so hard right now to tell people what the world was like before ESPN. They don't believe me anymore. There's only one college football game on every week.
Yeah. Scott, how lucky are we, though? And I mean it. How lucky are we to remember the country before the 90s and remember it and be working in it and thriving in it, and the difference of the mores of our society and the nuance differences, but the patriotism of all Americans. I mean, I really do believe that. If you can remember before 97, you're a lucky son of a gun. You remember a better time in America, don't you?
Well, you know, I remember back to the 60s and 70s. In fact, hate to admit it, but I was even old enough that I had to get a draft card during the Vietnam era.
Wow.
And we've had some real challenges in our country. We have stretches where things are good, stretches where things are bad. And right now we're going through a rough patch. But I'm still confident that our best days are still to come. And the reason is, despite all the garbage that's going on in our political system, despite a lot of the things that we hear, the American people still actually believe in freedom, equality, and self-governance. So I'm optimistic, even in this tough time.
Well, and that's the beauty of it, right, is that at least you also expose the fact that whether we're talking about sports, whether we're talking about your kid's school, whether we're talking about where to buy a house, everything is politics. Politics is everything in the way oil is the most important commodity in the world. Without it, there is no success, there is no achievement. And if you don't pay attention to it, it pays attention to you. And what gave you the idea to move forward with the kind of polling that you did? Is it just that you were very good at succeeding and you wanted to figure out what was actually diagnosing and predicting the mores of our society?
You know, the very first polling work that I did, my first client was the term limits movement. And way back then, I was shocked. I was a little naive about the political process. Shocked to learn that this was an 80% issue. Republicans like it, Democrats like it, young people, old people, white, non-white. And yet every time a political person talked about term limits, they said it was controversial. Like, how can it be controversial at 80%? So I've spent my entire polling career trying to highlight how out of touch the political class is with the American people, and that led to my latest book and to the research I've been doing on the elite 1%.
And this is crucially important. And you know, it's funny. I was at a smoker event for the radio station last night. We had Alex Marlowe, who does a show at Salem. Dan Proft does the morning show, and we were talking about polls. And I had said, I've never been polled, and I don't know anybody who has. And I understand the nuance of polling. I think it's very, very essential. But it also is really unbelievable how these 535 people who are elected to be representatives in the Republic, they can control, negate, ignore any of the polls that are important to the people, be it term limits or be it voter ID. Ultimately, the flaw in the system is we may have a republic, but there has been a jujitsu that has happened where the 1%ers, to me, aren't people who make money. They're people who make political decisions.
Well, one of the key attributes to be a part of the elite 1%, as we define it, is you have a postgraduate degree. Not that you started a business and served customers and made payroll, but that you had this postgrad. People with a postgraduate degree are wildly out of touch with the rest of the nation. And by the way, full disclosure, I have a master's degree, so you know it's not just casting stones. But when you look at polling data, people with postgraduate degree voted overwhelmingly for Kamala Harris. People with a bachelor's degree barely preferred Harris, and people without a degree preferred Trump. The real gap is that post-grad versus somebody else. And I think it's some resentment of the entrepreneurial class.
Well, of course, because they could not exist if they had to exist on their own merit. You know, this is the difference. I'm an old pit trader, old commodity guy, right? And I come from a neighborhood where you got bookies, loan sharks, the guys that collect, and every once in a while the A student. That's just how it works, right? And who's smarter at life? The guy who starts out with nothing and has to go to work, right? So you could go down to the Mercantile Exchange way back in the 80s and you could do very well for yourself. And it was interesting to see the contempt for commodity traders, guys who did well for themselves when you were involved or you interacted with who you're describing as the 1%ers. There was a resentment there. And you feel that, right? Because I think it's a flaw in human nature. A lot of people are jealous. Now, it's ironic when you grow up among poor people in your neighborhood, nobody was jealous of their friends or their other people. They would be almost excited and proud if somebody succeeded. It wasn't until I got out of the neighborhood that I said, why is this guy like that? And then you realize he doesn't feel you deserve your money. And that sums up the American Democrat Party today. They don't want anybody to have more than they have, and half of the way they have money is through a scam of politics.
Well, and much of the problem that we face today, I trace back to Woodrow Wilson, a man that I believe was the worst president we ever had, and he happens to be the only president who ever had a PhD. But Wilson really had contempt for America's founding ideals. He talked about the fact that the problem with our nation is the American people have never gotten over the Declaration of Independence. This
He's
is
right.
just crazy.
He was
stuff.
right. Yeah.
That's right. And by the way, we still haven't. And that's the good news.
It is the good news. And, this is why I at the end of the day, when you are polling people, it's very important the question, very important how you ask it and who you ask it to. But I've always believed the vast majority of this, what used to be called the silent majority, as we heard throughout our life, these are people who love this country. These are the true patriots. These are people who listen to talk radio. These are the people who look at your books, who want to understand and want to figure out why. And I think it's that minority that really is the one that has unfortunately undermined the very principles of the country. Do you feel like that at the end of the day when you're done with a big poll?
Absolutely. The way I describe America today is we're not a 50-50 nation at all. We're a 10-10-80 nation. There are 10% on the left who are engaged in a bitter political war against 10% on the right. Both sides are geared up for every political competition. And the 80%, they love their country. They're like you described earlier. They want their neighbors to do better. They're cheering for them. They're raising families. They're moving our nation forward. And they hate much of what they see in the political process. And as a result, they've kind of withdrawn. And they're the people we need to count on to get the nation back on track.
One of the things I see that I haven't read about, and I try to grab everything I can when it comes to history and political struggles, and you're right, there's a political angst in the nation. But one of the benefits I see is that people like myself and many of my friends, we left the Democrat areas. We got up and moved. And when you're around an area, I now am in Florida. Friends of mine are in Tennessee. The guy I'm going to have later on the show, we traded together. He's in Tennessee. There's a certain camaraderie among those people who left these Democrat areas, the New Yorkers, the guys from Michigan. I think we're seeing kind of a secession afoot in the cold Civil War that's always existed, and I'm excited about what I see happening in these good states. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, voting with your feet is one of the most important things you can do as an American. It's worth noting that the country was founded by people who didn't want to listen to the king anymore. One of the stories I tell in my book that I think really set America on a different path was when the Pilgrims came over to Massachusetts. They wanted to start a college. Good idea, except in those days, back in the 17th century, you had to get permission from the king to do anything. You could not start a school, a business, a nonprofit without a charter from the king. And the problem with that is the king would have said, sure, start a college and teach my theology, the theology that you just went across the Atlantic to get away from. So the colonists decided it was better to ask forgiveness rather than permission. They started a school illegally. They got lucky. There was an English Civil War afterwards. And that started a transformation in America where once people figured you could start Harvard without permission, well, why can't you start a library? Why can't you start a business? And that attitude was remarkable. Nobody had seen it at that point in history, and America has never looked back.
And that's the part of the battling for the soul subtitle I like about this book. Because when you take a poll today, I mean, I kind of think I know what they are, but I don't know specifically. When you take a poll of the American people and what their opinion is of Congress itself in general, of Washington, D.C., of the Senate, has it ever been, I mean, I have to believe it's the lowest it's ever been, but do the people who never are involved in a recession on K Street, do the people in the Capitol, do they understand the contempt the people have who they say they represent? Do they understand it?
No, they continue. One of the things you hear all the time is, well, people hate Congress, but they love their own representative. That's just not true. Half of voters believe their own representative trades votes for cash. People in Washington think that people are turning to them for leadership. It's been more than 50 years since most Americans trusted the government to do the right thing most of the time. This divide, this delusion is very deep. The elite 1% I talk about in the book, those who are politically active overwhelmingly believe the American people agree with them on key issues, and they're just wrong. And let me give you a couple of examples. Most of the politically active elites believe the American people today have too much individual freedom.
Oh, my word. This makes me crazy. You're making my bald spot bigger, Scott.
Sorry, but it is the death. Half of them don't think you should be allowed to vote unless you have a college degree. This is a group that is very entitled. They think that they are destined to rule over the rest of us, and they believe we'll be better off if we just follow their rules.
And those are the Democrats. No, I'm kidding. But it is a shocking reality in a republic, isn't it?
It is. And I do want to be clear on this. The elite 1%, more Democrats than Republicans, but there are Republicans who have these really horrible views as well. And when you talk about a Republican among the elite 1% or a Democrat among the elite 1%, they are not the same as ordinary voters who happen to be Republican or Democrat. They have a very distinct view of the world. They trust the federal government, and why not? They can get in to see people if they need to have something done. So there's a world that has a bubble that they live in that has lost touch with the nation they want to rule.
Scott, when you're looking at these polls, I'm curious to know, I find the most amazing thing about Donald Trump this. He had never run for dog catcher. Never. He never ran for anything. The first time this guy runs, he runs for the most important office, and he shocks the world. Now, what I think is, and I'm wondering if you've ever asked this question, I believe he's changing the appetite of those people who were disgusted with those 1%ers you speak of, the elitists in Washington, D.C. And he is changing the trajectory of the expectations of the citizens. Because one thing's for certain, we didn't see Joe Biden for months at a time. He was obviously on a changing table waiting for a diaper. However, this guy gives a press conference every day. Every day. He's excited. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And the elitists think we're going to get sick of it, when the reality is we're going to get used to it. And we're going to demand this of the next people. Do they understand how he's changed the appetite of citizens for business people to actually take charge?
He certainly has changed expectations. It's not clear where that's going to lead. The most amazing statistic about Donald Trump came on election night 2016. As you pointed out, he'd never run for office before. He was viewed negatively by most Americans, and only 38% of voters on election night in 2016 thought he was qualified to serve as president. And yet, 46% voted for him. There were about 11 million people who said, this guy's not qualified, but I'm voting for him because I can't stand the political elites. This is something I believe that Donald Trump is leading a movement that was first created by the first President Bush. President Bush said, read my lips, no new taxes. He broke that promise, and he created a massive level of distrust. Absolutely. And it never got resolved. And finally, in 2016, President Trump stepped up and said, we're going to do things differently now.
When you were a young man and when you had to get your draft card, the country was in a very big, tumultuous arena. And I'm curious to know, because I was born in the late 60s. I feel as if it's more tumultuous now than then, but I wasn't alive. I don't have the results to do it. You not only were alive, you're in the polling business. Am I right? Is it more tumultuous now than Vietnam?
It's really hard to say, partly because my memory is that's a long, long time ago. But also the world was so much different. In the 1960s and 70s, there were three television networks that controlled everything. 94% of people watched one of those networks. The 3 news shows, which defined our political world, all got their news from reading the New York Times in the morning. So we didn't have the diversity of voices that we do now. We wouldn't have a show like yours where you could challenge the status quo. So a lot of what we saw, there was a lot of anger, but it wasn't expressed in the same way. There was a lot of belief that America's best days had come and gone. In fact, people ridiculed Ronald Reagan for talking about the fact that we could defeat the Soviet Union. Reagan was right, they were wrong. But it was a very tumultuous time. We had race riots, anti-war riots. We had, the civil rights movement. And by the way, at the same time, we also managed to get men on the moon. Pretty remarkable.
Scott, I can't wait to go through the new book, Out of Touch, The Elite 1% and the Battle for America's Soul. It is out now, but I'm so impressed with you. Where's the best place to buy the book?
Best place is just to go to Amazon. You may have heard of it.
Yeah,
it's an online platform, but yeah, it's available right now. Go there and Out of Touch, the Elite 1% and the Battle for America's Soul. And let me be really clear. The battle is about America's founding ideals. If you believe in freedom, if you believe in equality and self-governance, you're on one side and the elitists are on the other.
And what I love, Scott, is you give me hope, because I have believed for years and years and years. I'm part of the American Principle Party, the APP. I am not a Republican, and I am certainly not a communist, Marxist, or traitor, so I can't be a Democrat. And I think the appetite for a third party has always been there. I think Donald Trump, whether he admits it or not, is the third party. And I think this is the most exciting time to be alive in America. It's the greatest rebuttal to the president you hate the most, Woodrow Wilson. It's the greatest rebuttal to collectivism and that 1% you write about in this book. I can't wait to see your next polls and for many, many more years.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, I'm an optimist because I see all the data, because I know the American people are with us on this.
Now, I love your name, but I said it wrong for years. My honey bunny corrected me. It's Rasmussen, but don't you think it should be Rasmussen, like Rasputin? Rasputin.
I've had it pronounced so many ways. And by the way, I've had people call me a lot of other things, too. So it's all part of the process.
Well, I'll tell you one thing they can never call you is lazy. It's amazing the life you've had, and we're all better off for the way in which you're restless and you continue to succeed. I look forward to the next book, the next conversation, and the next poll.
Well, thank you very much. You can find the polls at napolitannews.org and get the book, and I'd love to hear your thoughts after you've gone through it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott, for making time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll be back with your calls and comments.
This is the Shaun Thompson Show, where Democrats are always wrong, Republicans are seldom right, and politicians are never, ever to be trusted. On AM 560, The Answer.
Have you been watching gold and silver lately?